Hello and welcome to my channel. The title of this video is Villains of the Vedas, Part 1, Rakshasas. Introduction. In our modern world, with the power of electricity to roll back the murky reign of night, we have consciously forgotten the fear of the dark to a large extent. Such fears now only apply really to children. To exorcise a shadow or purge an uncanny feeling is as simple as flipping a switch. Then science banishes all the monsters. But was it really science or some other quality of that refined electric fire, that Agni, that is far more ancient? What was really in the shadows? This study will be the first in a series exploring the darkness just outside the magic circle cast by the light of the Vedic sacrifices. This is where the villains of the Vedas, of whom the seers warn mankind, lurk. Some may just want to steal your cattle for a feast, but others want you for the feast, and I do not mean as a guest. Still others are not really concerned with humans at all, but rather they wage their war against the Devas for far higher stakes, in which whole worlds could be considered the cattle. But certainly the most dangerous thing to consider is that these dark forces dwell not only in the shadows just around the corner, but within us as well. The first villain of the Vedas we will consider is the Rakshasa. These are very tall, powerfully built, and hairy beings with fangs. But they are not animals. They are, in fact, very intelligent. The Rakshasas figure prominently in the Hindu epics and in the Puranic literature. In the Ramayana, Ravanasura had evoked an entire army to defend his palace fortress, which was assaulted by Lord Rama with the help of the Vanaras, or the monkey people, about whom, as an aside, I have long wondered if they were not actually Sasquatch, in the Battle of Lanka. In the Mahabharata, it was the Pandava Bhima who was the bane of Rakshasas, who would prowl around the edges of human villages in search of human prey. The focus of this study will be strictly based on the appearance of the Rakshasas in the verses of the four Vedas. I wish to stress, as always, that this is my own research and I do not speak from a position of authority. I present it to you, the viewer, and I leave it to you to do your own research and to reach your own conclusions. As always, as many of the notes as I am able to include, I will include below. Permutations of the term Rakshasa. The Rakshasas as the Dasyus. One of the uses of the term Rakshasa is that found in the Vedas is an apparent synonym for the enemies of the five tribes, the Dasyus. Speaking generally, in support of this identification, there are verses such as where the sages pray, "Overpower all the races that are Pisacas," a description akin to the servile races which they attribute to the Dasyus. The Pisacas are another negative etheric species mentioned in the Vedas less frequently than the Rakshasas. They infest human spaces. But these general similarities in language are not enough to establish a connection. To understand this particular use of the term Rakshasa, it is necessary to examine more detailed comparisons between the Rakshasas and the Dasyus. invulnerable structures of iron and stone. The Rakshasas are said to dwell in invulnerable cities which only the Devas are able to assail. Quote, "Do you, who are irresistible, be to us, for the protection of our posterity, like the vast, spacious, iron-walled cities of the Rakshasas." Unquote. A similar imagery is applied to the forts and cities of the Dasyus. It should be mentioned that such descriptions are not found in relation to the towns of the Aryan tribes. Quote, "Indra has overturned 100 stone-built cities for Divodas, the donor of oblation. He put to sleep by delusion with his destructive weapons 30,000 of the servile races for the sake of Divodas." Unquote. In this verse is an example of a material military target captured by the warrior chief of the Bharatas, Divodas. Thus, this is an event in the material world. The structures, such as forts, are also metaphorically associated with iron, reflecting their strength and resistance to attack. This is the first description shared by the Rakshasas and the Dasyus. Dark-skinned appearance. The second point of identification relates to aspects of their appearance. The exact English meaning of the phrases in the Vedas, generally translated as dark-skinned or related phrases, are controversial, especially in the subcontinent. There are legitimate etymological disputes on these matters, and part of it is undoubtedly relates to a history of propaganda by the British Raj, which abused these verses. However, whatever they may mean in one's opinion, they are equally applied to both the Rakshasas and the Dasyus. As with their iron refuges, this description is applied only to them in the Vedas. I am unaware, for example, of any mantra in the Yajurveda or in the Atharva Veda which calls the Shudras, who are there mentioned, dark-skinned. Quote, "Praise the Somajush, which descends like streams of water, swift, brilliant, rapidly driving off the black-skinned Rakshasas." Unquote. As an example of my earlier statement regarding these readings, this might also be translated, some say, as "of the black cover" in the genitive, thus referring metaphorically to associations with night and darkness. The seers describes the Dasyus in a similar manner, referring to the black host and the dark-complexioned races. Quote, "Through fear of you, Vashvanara, the dark-complexioned races, although of many minds, arriving, abandoned their possessions when Agni, shining through Puru, you have blazed, consuming the cities of his foes." Unquote. Puru is a warrior who is celebrated in this verse for having burned a settlement of the Dasyus, in what appears to be an event, as with the Bharata tribal king, in the material universe rather than a battle in some other place, such as the Asura realm. Inhuman rites. The third point of overlay between the Rakshasas and the Dasyus refers to a specific practice. This will grant insight into why the sages so anathematized the cults of the Dasyus. Speaking in general, the sages' attacks on the Dasyus is that they adhere to lawless cults. Quote, "The Dasyus practicing no religious rites, not knowing as thoroughly, following other observances, obeying no human laws." Unquote. It is noted here that following other observances is a translation of amanusha, or inhuman. Thus, the Dasyus engaged in some inhuman practices. The adjective of lawless is frequently repeated, along with the fact that they were haters of prayer. This places them in opposition to the aims of the Vedic seers to spread the Aryan law, reflecting the proper relationship with the Devas. Besides not worshipping the sacred fire, what is the practice shared by the Dasyus and the Rakshasas which makes them lawless? The answer is cannibalism. In the Rig Veda, there are 3 references to cannibalism. Quote, Indra and Soma, afflict the Rakshasas, showers of benefits, cast down those who delight in darkness, put to flight the stupid spirits, consume, drive away, and utterly exterminate the cannibals. Unquote. Further, in prayer to Lord Agni to keep the cannibals from the home, the cannibal is equated with a malignant being, which may apply to a supernatural entity or to a simply depraved human. Quote, Agni, the destroyer of Rakshasas, who have 2 rows of teeth, sharpen them both, apply them to Rakshasas, and preserve both the upper and the lower worlds, and march, radiant, against the Rakshasas in the firmament. Seize the Yatudanas with your jaws. O Jatavedas, cut through the skin of the Yatudanas. Let your destructive thunder destroy him with fire. Sever his joints. May the flesh-desiring, flesh-eating devours his mutilated body. Unquote. The flesh referred to here is human flesh. Thus, this is a hymn against the cannibals. The hymn addresses 2 specific entities, the Rakshasas and the Yatudanas. In the Atharva Veda, we will meet them shortly. These are evil sorcerers. In the Atharva Veda, cannibalism is attributed to the Rakshasas as well. O Agni Jataveda, slay the bloody Pisacas, flesh devourer, mind destroyer, strong Indra, destroy him with the bolt of thunder. Unquote. In another hymn, the seers ask Lord Indra and Lord Soma for protection from these entities. Quote, let sin, Indra and Soma, round the wicked boil, like a cauldron set amid the flames of fire. Against the foe of prayer, eater of gory flesh, the fearful-eyed Kimidin, keep perpetual hate. Unquote. The prayer continues, asking Lord Indra to cast the wicked into the depths of darkness. It would appear then that one way the seers used the term Rakshasa was in referring to the Dasyus. This is akin to the word demon used in the 20th century to describe the actions of the Germans in the 2 world wars, or the view of the Islamic colonists settling Europe that the natives are demonic because they do not adhere to Islamic law. There are some hearing this which might conclude, therefore, that the Rakshasas and the Dasyus are in fact identical. This is the common view of Western scholars and readers of the Vedas. However, there are a clear variety of uses of the term Rakshasa which do not fit into this category. It is far broader, and the Rakshasas are not reducible to the human Dasyus. The Rakshasas as environmental phenomena. In the Yajurveda, when the 5th and final layer of the main fire altar is constructed, several bricks on the right side are dedicated to the 2 summer months. In the invocation of these manifestations of time, the Brahmins say, quote, Yatudanas are his weapons, Rakshasas his missiles, unquote. Unless we are to assume that the Dasyus were more active in their raids in the summer months of the dry season, this would here seem to be referring to drought. Thus, the terms Dasyus and Rakshasa are not always equal, as here the word Rakshasa is associated with a natural phenomenon. The Rakshasas as etheric species. Quote, Indra and Soma chastised the malignant Rakshasas, having plunged them in surrounding and inexcrutable darkness, so that not one of them may issue from it. So may your wrathful might be triumphant over them. Unquote. When all the mantras on the subject of the Rakshasas are examined, it becomes clear that they cannot be reducible to propaganda against rival human tribes, assuming that's what the Dasyus were. The skeptic might argue that drought is simply a metaphor and does not support this claim. However, it is clear in the text that there are preternatural traits and attributes of Rakshasas which cannot be applied solely to human beings. The etheric species in the Rig Veda. Sacrifices. One of the concerns of the sages was that the Rakshasas would parasitize the energy generated by the Vedic rites from both the actual sacrifices as well as the vibratory and creative energy generated by the sounds of the hymns. This is expressed in the Yajur Veda with warnings that another etheric species, the Asuras, are attracted to the sacrifices. Quote, Expelled are Asuras and friends who sat upon the covering grass. The Asuras, attracted by oblation, who roam at will, assuming varied forms, from this our world may Agni drive them, whether they clothe themselves in large or little bodies. Unquote. By driving them from our world, and their shape-shifting ability, it is clear these are etheric and not human beings. Or worse, that there is anxiety among the sages that the rituals would be abused in a covert manner to nourish and strengthen the Rakshasas instead of the Devas and the Pitris or the Fathers. This would pose a covert threat to the community. Quote, Send Maruts into darkness with cars devoid of wheels, the man who invites the Rakshasas to the food of the Devas. Him alone who reviles us when offering praise to you. Unquote. The danger here is not only that what the Devas and the Fathers are denied, but what the demons gain. If this anxiety were merely about rival tribesmen, that they might interrupt the ceremonies, then it would not be the Maruts, but physical warriors who would be protecting the Hall of Sacrifice. Exorcism. Another concern which the sages had regarding these shadowy beings which skulked around the edges of the sacrificial fire to snack energy, like a pack of wild dogs might allege in an abattoir, is that they were able to possess individuals. Quote, O you of brilliant wealth, let not the Rakshasas enter us, nor the torment of evil spirits. Unquote. This certainly would not apply to physical humans, nor is man banished from a space, as are the Rakshasas and other nefarious astral predators, by light. Quote, The radiant light is born mighty, the slayer of adversaries, the slayer of Vitras, abundantly slaying the Dasyus, the slayer of asuras, the slayer of rivals, unquote. The sages teach that light consumes demons, and this is why Lord Agni is the slayer of Rakshasas, as is Lord Surya in his form of Savita, or the rising sun. One technique to purify a space and banish the Rakshasas so it may be pure before ritual activity is given in the Yajurveda. In this to slay the demonic brood, the apamaga plant and firebrand was used to fumigate the ritual space. The fire was taken from the southern fire, which is generally held to be inauspicious. Appearance. The etheric species is also removed from man in another way. While they may be dark in a variety of ways and hairy, they are also described as having a form in which they appear with 3 heads and 3 legs. Quote, "Regard, beholder of men, the Rakshasas among the people. Cut off his 3 heads, cut off his flanks. With your might, cut down the triple foot of the Yatudana." Unquote. They are also described as hideous, and another word translated as vile, which is used in the Atharva Veda, is Kamidin. Finally, the Rakshasas are also shapeshifters. Quote, "Destroy the evil spirits, whether in the form of an owl or of an owlet, of a dog or of a duck, of a hawk or of a vulture. Slay the Rakshasas with a thunderbolt as with a stone." Unquote. The Atharva Veda, Dasyus sorcerers' use of Rakshasas. Kamidins as familiar spirits. Quote, "Bring the Kamidin hither, bring the Yatudana, self-declared for Agni. Deva, thou lauded, has become the Dasyus slaughterer. O Jatudana, Lord Supreme, make thou the Yatudanas mourn. Let all greedy Kamidins wail." Unquote. The most common association in the Atharva Veda with Rakshasas is that of the word Kamidin. The Western scholars translate this word to mean familiar spirit. While this does fit the contextually with the Rig Veda, it should be borne in mind that there may be elements of projection by these scholars of European witch lore onto the text, perhaps justifiably, as we shall see. It appears that the Dasyus and the sorcerers of the Atharva Veda, who may have inherited their cults, were able to evoke the Rakshasas and use them for a variety of destructive tasks. For example, to attack the fetus of a pregnant woman. Quote, "Approach not, come not hitherward, creep not thou in between her thighs. I set to guard her, Baja, which chase him evil spirits. Sniffer and feeler, him who eats raw flesh, and him who lips his licks. Aryas with the tails of dogs, the yellow Baja hath destroyed." Unquote. The Kamidins were also used for other more direct magical attacks as well. The Atharva Veda provides reversal spells to return the attack back upon the sender. Quote, "Back, O Baruji, fall your charms, your weapon, ye Kamidins, eat your possessor, eat ye him who sent you forth, eat your own flesh." Unquote. Shamanism. The sages of the Atharva Veda provided one intriguing clue regarding the practices of these sorcerers, which reflect how ancient they may well have been. They tell us that Kukuravas wear bear skins and they dance in the forest. This would seem to indicate shamanic rituals. Reading this in that context, bear would be the totem animal of these men. This further reflects the gulf between the Vedic religion and the cult of the Dasyus. The Vedic rites are based on relationships with the celestial devas and not the totem animals, which do not figure in the worldview of the seers. This may mean that the Dasyus cults were more terrestrially oriented. Universally, shamanism is associated with shapeshifting. There are hints of this in Celtic folklore with entities such as the Puka and the Selkie, while amongst the American Indians of the western United States, this type of shamanism or medicine man is called a skinwalker. Like the sorcerers in the Vedas, he is regarded as taboo. Techniques were also used by the sorcerers of the subcontinent to achieve the same result. The sages spoke of, quote, a sorcerer who smears himself with the flesh of men, unquote. This is one piece of evidence that the cannibalism the Dasyus practiced was ritual. The flesh eater used this as an element of their transformations. Even if this was not completely ritual cannibalism, it was, at the very least, using human body parts for magical purposes. They believed that this gave them the ability to fly, even in the form of an owl or a dog, and steal milk from cows. This interference with cattle is also found in the Rig Veda, where the sages curse them, let the Yatudana drink poison from the cattle. The exact type of behavior is reported in European witch lore. It was believed that witches would smear themselves with an ointment. In some cases, this is reported to have a base of nightshade, opium, and mandrake, to fly, change shape, and also to attack cattle. The exact role of this grisly ointment in the Atharva Veda is unclear, but there are strong indications that the transformative ability itself came as a result of possession by the Kamidins or Rakshasas as familiars. Thus, the ointment may have been either an offering or a catalyst. This is found in a verse where the seers pray to the celestial Maruts to attack them. Quote, Maruts crush demoniacs who become birds and fly in the night, unquote. The word demoniacs generally refers to those who are demonically possessed. Thus, this would seem to play a central role in their transformations. This may be why the word Yatudana is used interchangeably for both etheric Rakshasas and human wizards. Regarding these flights, they seem to have been most common on the new moon. This is again in agreement with the Western esoteric tradition that teaches that the apogee of the dark forces is the night of the moon. This is the time to practice dark magic. Vedic sacrifices to the Rakshasas. For many Westerners viewing this section will be the most surprising and certainly the strangest. Considering I just spoke of wizards who paste themselves with human flesh and change into flying dogs, that's saying a lot. Earlier, it was mentioned that the Devas kill those who sacrifice to the Rakshasas. However, in the Yajurveda, there are blood sacrifices which are offered by the Brahmins to these etheric entities. There are no hymns to honor them. Naturally, this is another indication that the Rakshasas are not universally to be understood as the rival human Dasyus. Specifically, the blood sacrifices occur in a surprising place, the horse sacrifice. This is surprising because this ritual is the pinnacle of the Vedic sacrificial system. Fittingly, on a symbolic level, the animals offered to the Rakshasas were a black dog and a hyena. Also, and most astonishingly, the blood of the consecrated horse was also dedicated to them, meaning this is not a minor offering to what were viewed as simply bogies to stay hiding in the closet. Another example of sacrifice is found in the new moon rite. This is appropriate as they are more active at this time in the lunar cycle. Here, the grass used in the sacrifice is bound and handed to the sacrificer by his wife. He addresses this bundle as it is untied, quote, "You are the Rakshasas' allotted portion," unquote. This presents a clear contradiction between the injunction of the Rig Veda and the practices of the Yajur Veda. It also reflects a moral conundrum. Why offer parts of the most valuable sacrifice of all to demons? In the Orthodox Abrahamic faiths, this ritual action would be, of course, unthinkable. There are two potential resolutions to this apparent contradiction. One, there was a ritual change from the time of the Rig Veda to the Yajur Veda on this issue. Two, the ban in the Rig Veda refers specifically to the soma, that is, the food of the devas and the worthy ancestors. It is possible that there was a change in the ritual between the Rig Veda and the Yajur Veda, a period of many centuries, if not more. In the Rig Veda, for example, there were 3 fire altars in the Hall of Sacrifice, while there are 8 mentioned in the Yajur Veda. Thus, there is not perfect continuity. However, more likely is the issue of the Soma sacrifice. When Lord Indra quaffs the Soma brew, he goes out and destroys cities of the enemy, and heaven and earth cannot contain Indra on Soma. So it is probably likely that the seers did not want the Rakshasas to have access to this exhilarant. After all, it is specifically the food of the devas. This leaves the moral question. Why should that which is dangerous and chaotic, which we could legitimately call evil, and this is certainly the case in the later Puranas, have any allotted portion at all? One explanation, which is not drawn from the Vedic text, is that these are humans who have reincarnated into these forms, and that the energy of the Vedic sacrifice may assist them to evolve in a more positive direction. I would add the caveat here to deter the trolling evangelicals that this does not mean that the Rakshasas were receiving the blood of the horse sacrifice as an example of blood atonement for their salvation in the Vedas. However, there is a deeper philosophical view here. The Abrahamic faiths inherit a metaphysical and moral dualism from the Zoroastrians. To function individually and socially in the material world of the current era, this dualism is a necessary construct, but it is artificial. In reality, all things which exist are an expression, ultimately, of the divine. Referring to the metaphor of the cosmic cow as a manifestation of the goddess from which all things arise, the sages of the Atharva Veda teach, Quote, "She," the goddess as the cosmic cow, "hath become this universe, fathers, seers, hath become devas, man, and asuras. Both devas and mortal men depend for life and being on the cow. She hath become this universe. All the sun surveys, she is." Unquote. The Rakshasas fulfill their role in the unfolding of the universe, and in this role they are given an allotted portion in the Vedic sacrifices. In the biological order of the natural world, there are predators, and these are simply this same role translated to the etheric plane. They are respected but kept at bay. In other words, this is yours, take no more, and don't bother us. The same can be said for the darker and more egotistical aspects of human instincts and desires, our own inner Rakshasas. They too have an allotted portion and a claim on blood. After all, Manu, or fury, is honored as a deva in the Rig Veda, and the seers prayed to behold and enjoy the earth. Sometimes, trying to banish that which is a natural part of oneself to the outer darkness can only leave one haunted. Our inner Rakshasas must also be respected, but kept in their place. Thank you very much.